back, and we back. Zeus P, Tank Jew. Let the light in, man. It's the 2-hour lunch break, dog. I'm locked in. So turn your speakers up a notch and grab the white gin. And when I'm on the road to the office or the crib, it's Big Zeus, Ain't Jew, the ones I wanna hear. This is that 2-hour lunch break live from Lady Bird J. Lake. Coming to you live, putting on for the city. This is that 2-hour lunch break live from Lady Bird J. Lake.
And it's coming home to Texas. It's coming home all the way to Austin, Texas, baby.
And we are back with another edition of the 2-Hour Lunch Break Podcast, a podcast from Austin for Austin. We are here at home base, Dawa Studios, east side of ATX. I am Saint, one half of the 2-Hour Lunch Break Podcast, and I got my co-host.
Try with Zeus. And man, today, man, we have a special episode featuring 3 esteemed mental health professionals, each bringing a unique perspective and a wealth of experience to the table. Man, first off, we got the homie, Kenneth Dobbins, Kent State alum, and dedicated mental health therapist and owner of City Therapy PLLC.
Next up, we also have Kevin Overton-Hadnot, licensed professional counsel based here in Austin, Texas. Kevin's diverse background includes a bachelor's of science in business administration, a master's in clinical medical health counseling, and he's passionate about reducing the stigma surrounding mental health and providing a cultivating relationship and competitive care.
All right. And last, but certainly not least, we are honored to have Dr. Heath D. Muhammad, the executive director at H&M Counselor with over a decade of experience in various mental health settings. Heath brings a down-to-earth personality and a wealth of expertise to his practice. His approach focuses on authenticity, humor, and creating a safe space for clients to explore their challenges.
Together, these 3 professionals are not only advocates of mental health, but also champions of them and of change within here in Austin community and beyond. It is an honor to have you gentlemen here. Thank you so much for coming and taking the time out.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for inviting us, man.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Well, let's get right into it, man. Let's start. Let's discuss about. Let's talk about your own personal journeys. Let's start from you, Brother Heath, and then move right along. Let's talk about what initially inspired you to pursue a career in the health industry.
Well, first of all, again, thank y'all for inviting us and thank y'all for being a part of this. Growing up, my mother was a social worker, so I used to go on those home visits with her, and that was the initial thing that got me interested. But then when I was 19, after graduation, me and a couple of friends went to Houston, and somebody shot us. I was shot a few times. Best friend was killed. Wow. And I didn't know that I had PTSD until I started, dabbling in mental health and realized, man, I'm kind of messed up.
Right.
So how many other black men out there are dealing with this and not knowing it and not having that safe space to talk about it? Mm-hmm. So that was one of the things that made me want to get into this, to provide that safe space.
Mental health ran rampant in my family for a really long time, so I saw it up close and personal and just saw that there was a need for black mental health therapists. And then at Kent State, I coached football. I was an intern. And there's, as you guys know, just within football, there's a lot of men of color that are playing football. And I had a friend that had a hard time transitioning out of football and not knowing how to regulate his emotions. And so he ran into that issue when he was married. And when I was in between trying to figure out, do I want to coach? Do I want to be a therapist? And when I had that conversation with him, I saw that there was a need for that, as well as just helping black men transition out of sports, as well as just how to regulate your emotions so that you're just not throwing your body at someone constantly to take out that frustration, that pain, that trauma. And so that's what just catapulted me into pursuing mental health counseling.
Man, for me, my counseling journey began when I was a little kid. So I had court-mandated counseling right here in Austin, and I know now what it was, but really my brother and I have a twin. We actually went into the counseling room. We played, kind of on the floor. We did some things or whatever, but we didn't really connect with the therapist. She was a white female, right? But we didn't really get anything out of it, we don't believe. And so I just imagine how much more better, right, that my life would have been had I had someone else that I could probably relate to. So I just imagine me now fast forwarding to being a therapist now, being able to be a mirror in front of other black and brown men, boys, right, to sort of open up their horizons, letting them explore who they are and be themselves essentially. And so I just it came full circle for me, starting in Austin, back in Austin now. So just being a therapist has really helped me I literally mean this, a beacon of hope for other black and brown people.
That's beautiful.
Amazing. So I'm curious, Kenneth, I got a question for you, right? So I'm a former, football player, played in college, played in high school, all of that, right? And I know you said you had done some coaching while you were at Kent State, right?
Yep.
So with that said, how does your experience coaching impact the way you, shape your approach with therapy and counseling? Does it make you more empathetic? What does that do for you?
Yeah, it definitely makes me more empathetic for sure, as well as just the coaching mindset of how you have to break things down and think step by step, almost like when you're breaking down film. And so when someone's presenting to you the things that they're walking through, they're basically giving you the film of their life. And so then just breaking that down step by step with them and making it very digestible so that they're able to understand the why behind the what.
And Heath, I got a question for you personally, man. So we have this conversation about what mental health looks like, what I guess quality mental health, a good mental health, but nobody can give me a cookie cutter blueprint of what a good healthy person is, identified as. Mm-hmm. I guess where do you start from? I guess some of the information that Kenneth identified. Where do you start from when entering or approaching a new client or a new personnel that is dealing with something, and you have to unpack that first, right, before you can address the issues? How do you go about starting that conversation? How do you go to get them to the better side, I guess?
I think for me, one of the things that working with black men that I have to do is break down or get them to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. So what the first thing that I'm doing is asking them, what makes them happy? And sounds like a simple question, but if I ask most people what is 5 things that make them happy, and it's not about what they're doing for other people, people have a hard time coming up with 3. Right. And then that gets them to start thinking of why that is. And then, then you have this case of, men, we don't really think that we're people pleasing, but a lot of us are people pleasing in our marriages and our relationships. Because, happy wife, happy life, which is BS, in my opinion, and I think, y'all can agree with that. I hope y'all agree with that. But it has to be, happy spouse for a happy house. So we start breaking that down, and then I find that men start to be vulnerable. Now they're ready to talk about what they're going through. You'll start to find out that there's a high amount of men that have been sexually assaulted, that have never talked to anybody about it. And that type of stuff needs to be brought out in therapy. But the first thing that I find that is probably not the most difficult, but the thing that gives you the most trouble is getting them to be vulnerable. So you're looking at, a month, if they're going a weekly before they decide, I'm in therapy, I know you ain't gonna say shit, so let me talk about what we're supposed to talk about. And so that's what it is with me. Like, what are the things that's making you happy? How far are you from that? Why aren't you doing those things that make you happy? Yeah. And what did you love to do before you're feeling like this? And that really breaks the ice on that.
Okay. So one thing I'm curious about, I know we were doing some research prior to the interview, and Kevin, I was, looking into your background, right? And I noticed you have a background in business administration.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So talk about what happened, what made you shift from that to clinical mental health counseling, because that's a big shift. Yeah. What sparked that?
He was working in business and found out people are crazy. That's what happened.
Hey, that could be it.
I think what happened was a good thing, right? So one, I love my MBA. It's got me so far. I think as a young guy, what I was exposed to was like maybe business opportunities and business potential and being more of an entrepreneur. And so I feel like I chased that dream as far as I possibly could without doing anything specific and productive with it. And so that landed me then, okay, I have this MBA, shout out to Concordia University, Texas. What do I do with it, right? And so basically what the next steps was, I want to help people. And because of my passion for helping people, I was ultimately a worship leader in church, I saw people sort of come in and worship and cry and give their heart to God, believe and go back to the same anxiety, depression, PTSD that they were coming in with. And so I was like, well, I have an MBA. I want to help people. Let me combine those things. So that really led me down this this counseling track. And obviously, you can't be a therapist without going to school, so you have to get a second master's degree. Yeah. And so that's how I've been able to bridge my MBA with my clinical mental health counseling degree, because I want to help people, but also have a business behind it as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it sounds like it's very clear that each and every one of you have a unique perspective and opinion on how to approach each and every individual that you encounter. Yeah. So, I mean, Kevin reached out to you to have this conversation, but explain more, the whole team, I guess, explain how you guys collaborated with one another, what made you guys want to, what made this say this is a good, solid decision to partner with these brothers.
Yeah, well, I mean, just to be honest, I mean, we all are sort of doing our respective things in our own spaces, and rightfully so. Each one of us have our own private practice. I'm also working not only at counseling for us, but also at Harvest as well, where we see victims of violence coming through our doors. But I think for me, we're in a unique position. Like, we are Black male therapists in a white female dominated space. And so for me, I value community. I thrive on community. And so what better way to, we're just leaving Mental Health Awareness Month, right? To sort of be talking about this and reducing the stigma with being with our brothers. I mean, we're in the trenches, right? And I mean that lightly. Yeah. We're in the trenches doing this work together. And I just really want to bring us together. So I think the more people see us together as mental health clinicians, therapists, then maybe that may draw all other men into sort of like being acceptable and receptive to come to therapy, honestly.
Gotcha. So I'm curious. So I know we're talking about Black male mental health, right? With that said, and I actually want to get all of y'all's opinion. What do you think are some of the, what are some of the specificities? Like, what are some of the particular things that Black men specifically, what are some of the challenges that they face that other groups may not face when it comes to mental health?
Well, the something that comes to mind is also just the trauma that is living in our blood on a day-to-day basis. And so there are triggers that happen to us on a daily basis. And so our bodies might respond in a way that just doesn't make sense. And might not be able to have the words to the bodily response to that trauma response, basically. Okay. And so our other counterparts just don't have that kind of experience. And then just I've had a client that he's a very strong macho guy, but based off of the experience that he had at work, he ended up just shutting down, crying in a corner. Could not explain why, and it was a small experience, but he had a big trauma experience. Once we got down to the deep of it, it's in our bloodline. This is something that we've been walking through and surviving through for a long time. Yeah,
and I agree with that, because there's a lot of things that our white counterparts just can't understand. Not that they don't want to, they just can't. They can't walk in the shoes. So a lot of that needs to be uncovered, and we have to, give people a place to talk about it, because there is so much, not just stigma around mental health, there's stigma, and I'm pretty sure that Kevin can attest to this, being in corporation, they expect you to operate in a certain way. And then when you talk to Black women, it's like, you can't be angry, you can't say anything, so they're walking around, and how many of us have to code switch just in order to live, just in order to pay the bills? I have to put on these masks, and I'm tired of wearing the mask, so if we can set up those, spaces where they can let those masks down and see who they truly are, I think that's a beautiful thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think just to add to that, many of us are dealing with this and going through life, which life be life, and we're dealing with this in isolation and alone. Like, I have to carry all of the weight by myself. I'm thinking of someone that I work with who sat in my office for the first time in 37 years, was finally able to break free from what he was carrying. For 31 years, you carried this thing with you, had no one to walk with you. You felt like you were abnormal, that you were wrong, that you were crazy. And finally, after me, as another fellow Black male, sitting with him, like just being able to kind of be free and like break free from what he was carrying. So I think I think living in isolation has been sort of like what we've experienced as well, that we have to carry all this by ourselves. We are showing up, carrying the relationship sometimes, carrying the financial pressure sometimes, the performative nature of being in corporate America, the mass, everything. And so I just feel like we just have to realize that that's a part of our experience, and just kind of I think that's what I see sometimes.
I'm gonna go a little off take here, because I know that in you all's profession, building rapport and trust is imperative, right? What would you say, and I would love to hear everyone's opinion, what would you say for an individual who's like, I'm not going to therapy, those people who are helping me are messed up too? What would be your opinion and your thought to kind of break through that? Because I know that's definitely, especially for our culture, right? That's going to be one of their arguments, right? Yeah. But what would be your thoughts? I'm going to start here with you, Heath.
My thought on that is, like, that's not all the way true, right. But there is some experiences that we do share. Right. And if, for me, I'm very transparent in a lot of my things. So I will share, some things that I've been through and how I overcame them and how they can overcome them in their ways. Eventually, if they keep coming, they'll start to loosen up and start to feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. But for me, I do my counseling like we're just sitting having drinks. Like, I don't have on a cardigan. Mm-hmm. I'm not drinking coffee. I'm not constantly saying what I'm hearing you say is this, and how does that make you feel? It's like we're just having a conversation over some Crown and Coke, and it's just casual like that. We're definitely doing therapy though. Yeah. Like, therapy is being done, but it's not clinicky. I know that ain't a word, but it's not clinicky.
No, we get it. Yeah. We know what you're talking about.
Right.
I agree. Definitely the personable approach. To his point, I also don't have like that long couch in my office. And I also with my clients, I'll talk about other things as well as outside of mental health, so sports or whatever their interests are. And just so when I learned that, so say for example, they're into spades. And so we'll talk spades, or if there's something that they're interested in that I'm not particularly interested in, I'll do my research, and then I come back and be like, hey, transparency, I don't know what you like to do, but I took out the time to learn about it, and so I want to be a learner as well, because you're learning from me. Let me be a learner from you, so that this is a collaborative process, so that we're walking together side by side.
Yeah.
Kevin, before you, let me be clear. I am not drinking Crown in my session. I'm just saying it's light.
Pull up on him.
Right, that's the vibe though.
Bring the apple Crown. No, I'm joking. But no, I'm not drinking in session. But it's like if we were drinking.
Yeah. I love that. I see the visual. You see it? Yeah. Drink at your own risk.
So you messed up, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think the other thing is, one of the things that we don't get to do often as Black people, or Black men in particular, is normalize that your experience. I mean, so I'm coming in initially and normalizing that what you're going through is typically that's what we see when people go through life. Life has its ups and downs. So normalizing initially, maybe how I build rapport is really just letting them know that they're the expert of this journey. I don't hold all of the power and the knowledge and the expertise about your journey. I'm going to reflect back, challenge some if I need to, but I'm letting them know that they have the power in this room. For the first time ever, maybe this is probably your first time, like, owning your own responsibility, owning your own journey, owning your own life, finally being heard. So I'm just making the space comfortable. I do have a couch in my office, by the way, but it's for you to be comfortable and do what you want to do. I've actually had someone lay down, sit down. I mean, this is your space. This is your 50 minutes. So if you want to, like, take a break, whatever, this is probably the first time that you've ever sat down and been still for a second.
And another thing, Kevin, it's a lot of people's first time being validated.
Yes.
To go back to what you're saying, like, this is your thing and it's really happening.
Yeah.
And you're not crazy.
Yeah.
Like, to be validated, and you've never been validated as a man,
Yeah.
other than what you bring to the table. How much money do you bring? If you're not bringing 100,000, the whole thing. But to be validated by another Black man is definitely beneficial.
Yeah, I spoke at a college recently, and they do like an hour where Black men can come on campus together to have a safe space. And I just spoke about mental health and I wanted to see who was in the room. But at the end of that, one of the young men said, "This is the first time that I felt heard." And that was powerful, and that's it.
He said that's it.
Right.
Some people hadn't even been heard by their parents in their minds,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So, Heath, question for you, right? So I know you've got a chance to do some work as an executive director. So you get a chance to, get a view of mental health like at a satellite level, like at the macro level, right? So with that said, what do you think are some systemic changes that can be made to like improve access to those mental health services that people are needing?
I think some of the things that have to be changed is more of us, so people can feel comfortable.
Okay.
I mean, Austin is a great city, born and raised here. However, it's not great for us. We don't have a lot of the resources available, or they're available, but there's no comfortability in seeking those out.
Yeah.
So I think, the work that we're doing is actually changing that systematic thing, but it's not going to happen from them.
Got it.
We're going to have to do that. We're going to have to take up space
Yeah.
in order to bring that into existence.
Okay.
That's cool. And so, Kenneth, let's talk a little bit more about like the resilience of a person, right? In your experiences, what are some of the most common traits or strategies that people can utilize in order to overcome maybe some traumas or mental health challenges that they're going through?
That's a great question. And you're talking about like just internally. Well, before we even can get into that, I also want to just speak to the fact of it can be also just be exhausting to have to constantly be resilient. And so just taking the time to stop and pause. We all can do that, even if it's for just 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Stop and pause and just acknowledge I'm tired. And just give yourself the space to say I'm tired. And then we all have the ability to breathe. And so just doing deep breathing, but not breathing from your chest, because when we're breathing from our chest, it's fight or flight. But when we breathe from our belly, that's when we start to kick in the parasympathetic system and help the mind relax. Yeah. And so you just start breathing from your belly. So first, say I'm tired, acknowledge it, sit with it, and then start breathing from your belly and not your chest. So you start to relax and start to let go of the baggage that we carry on a day-to-day basis.
He's throwing some real science on y'all.
I started breathing from my belly. I ain't gonna lie. I was like how that fit?
Diaphragm. Right. Diaphragm.
Yeah, that's real. I like that. All right.
I wouldn't have used not one of those words.
But I think the truth is we often breathing is so important. It's really we're overriding our nervous system and we're slowing it down. That inhaling and exhaling is what we're doing. And so I think we take breathing for granted, but that's really one of the things that helps us calm and regulate our body, get us back to more of a regulated state. So this science that he's throwing out is something that we don't. I stepped through my science class when I was in high school, so I picked it back up in my master's program. But the reality is it's really helping us really try to figure out how do we really live day to day. But this breathing is kind of helping us navigate our own systems.
Got it.
And we got to allow ourselves to do that. Like
Yeah.
we have to allow ourselves to breathe, to take that time and not feel like it's a burden on somebody else when we're taking time for us. That's a good point, man.
So, Kevin, got a question for you, right? So I know, looking into your background, you've done work with adolescents with disabilities, right? So with that said, how do you approach therapy with like younger children and, make them feel supported and understood versus you would with an adult?
Yeah, I think there's two sides of it. One is really working with the kiddos, my young people that I work with. It's just giving them a space. I really do believe that and this is a bit of a tension between what the parents need in the moment, which is usually behavior management, with what the kids need in the moment, which is nurturing and care, right? And so oftentimes I feel like if the kids feel better, then they'll behave better. So that's kind of counter to what parents usually need. We need you to sit down, be quiet, and it's like, well, no, they need their attention. One of my lovely parents had mentioned, why is he just sitting in front of me? I want him to go outside and play. He's just sitting there looking at me crazy. Well, he needs your attention. He wants some nurturing. He's a black boy, but maybe he wants to be around his mom to get maybe a hug for this moment or to kind of just let you know how his day went. And so it's really trying to in my counseling suite, just let them play. Let them be themselves. Through their play, they're able to express and let me know kind of what's happening. I literally played tic-tac-toe, which is not really, it's not clinical per se, but it is because all we do... All we did was just sit there for probably about 30 minutes. And after that, he was like, you know what? Well, when I leave here, I'm going with my mom to see her new boyfriend. So that's information that we can begin working with. Okay, so how you feel? Tell me more about that. Are you okay with that? Do you feel safe? That's information. But it was really through building that rapport with him because he had never really opened up to a stranger like that. And so I think the one side of it is just sort of letting my young people play and express themselves the way they want to express. They're usually under a lot of stress, on a structure, a lot of rules, a lot of order, a lot of yelling sometimes. And also for my parents, I do a lot of parent consultations as well, where I'm helping the parent rewire to what the kid actually needs. Again, you help him feel better, maybe he'll behave better. And I wonder why, maybe there is maybe some chaotic behavior, because maybe there's a little bit of chaos in maybe his environment, and that's okay. But how do we work through that as a support team to get him what he needs?
It's beautiful.
That makes sense. Kenneth, growing up, you talked about, speaking of family, you talked about your tight-knit family and growing up there. How does that affect your approach when working with family-oriented therapy and sessions?
First, being aware of Black culture and how Black culture were very tight-knit, and not making that a negative thing. And I think, just a quick aside, I think that's the other benefit of working with a therapist that's either Black culture informed or is a Black therapist, because we know about the culture, and so we don't try to break up that tight-knitness and confuse it with codependency, because it's very, very close. But I use it as a strength. And so because we all lean on each other so well, and so informing families, and so when I'm working with an individual, but then also providing education to families so they also feel empowered. And so when they're seeing, trauma triggers, or if ADHD, and understanding how ADHD works, and when the parents understand it, then they're like, oh, okay, so and-so is just not acting out. Like, this is what, like, their ADHD was coming up. We're not trying to use medication. We're trying to use natural other things. And so, yeah, just informing families and using the tight-knit families as a strength, as opposed to looking at it as this terrible negative thing that is tearing down the client. Granted, there are toxic families. Like, let's be real. There's also toxic families. So they're also recognizing that part too, but using that strength. So, yeah. Okay.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk self-care, right? So I know in the profession that you all work in, I'm sure it can be pretty draining. You're giving of yourself constantly, right? So with that said, how do you all practice self-care for yourselves? Like, what does that look like for you? Like, do I gotta go hit the gym? Do I go talk to my family? Do I go sit down and play the game? Like, what practices do you all take to do that?
Kevin said green tea.
Right, yeah, green tea. There we go.
I got my tea. I think I would start, and this is a recent thing because I'm not perfect, right? So I'm just coming into this as well as I'm learning. I'm building this airplane of myself as I'm flying it. Just finding more intentional time to get rest. I said earlier that most of us, me included, we're moving and shaking. This is part of the capitalistic society that we live in. Mm-hmm. We're grinding, and our production is sort of tied to our worth, or vice versa, right? And so, but trying to do the opposite of that. Like, where can I find rest in my schedule, in my life? Sitting down, being still, letting my thoughts catch up to my body. I've been moving and grooving for 7 days straight. Can I sit down for 10 minutes? Right. So I think rest is the name of the game. And I think for me, I literally breathing has been the thing that's helped me kind of calm myself down, because I'm on 10 all day long. Mm-hmm. So like literally coming home, breathing literally is a thing that I do. But I sit off my counter and also eat grapes as well. So just finding like some respite time, and then literally working out is a thing I've been trying to get on as well. Like my doctor even mentioned earlier, like this sauna helps me often. So I go to the sauna at least 3 to 4 times a week too. Okay. So literally trying to do some more real self-care, but also therapy too. This therapist has a therapist as well.
There we go.
For me, I get up and I go to the gym, and I also try to at least once a month take Friday off and actually go somewhere. Go do something else other than therapy. Mm-hmm. And I also want to separate that. Like, I don't even want my hobbies to be therapy related. Yeah. I want them to be, I do photography, I want to go hiking, and that calms me down, and I need time away for myself. So that's what's, I'm trying to get that to work for me,
Gotcha.
Yeah, I definitely find time in the morning for quiet time, get a little time in the Word and pray, just make sure that my spirit's lined right. But then I also make sure I work out 3 to 4 times a week. I need that. I got to keep my body moving. And I go to masseuse once a month. And then I also had to adjust my mindset going into therapy. I heard someone say that as a therapist, they started to view themselves as a doula as opposed to the person that's birthing. And so and it's like, okay, so what's inside of you, it's already inside of you. You can birth it, but I'm not going to birth it for you. You can do it. So then it's just like the pain that you're feeling, that's normal. Keep pushing, keep pushing. But I'm not going to jump in the bed with you and push that baby out because it's already inside you. So I've already just like adjusted that mindset as well. And it's been huge, like huge.
That's a bar, low key.
I was, dude, because I was getting there. I'm probably pretty close to burnout. So I had to adjust my mindset. Yeah.
All right.
And I was lucky enough that in my practicum, I met a guy that did he did invitational instead of motivational. So what I tell my clients is that I'm not going to take credit for all the advances that you have, but I'm also not going to take credit if you don't do any of the work. So I'm inviting people to change. I'm not trying to motivate them because the motivation becomes my thing. So I'm just going to keep inviting people to change, and it's working for me where I'm not taking it home.
That's big. So this is for everyone across the board. An inspiring mental health advocate, right, who's trying to enter into the field, a younger you, as it were. Give us a nugget of advice that you would provide to them.
Make sure that you're in it for the right reason, because this is not and I don't know about y'all, but this is not a get rich thing. Like you can eventually get there, by doing other things, but just doing therapy within itself is not going to get rich because there's a limit on what you can actually, how many clients you can see before you start to break down. But you got to start thinking about why are you here? Like, is it for you want to help them, or why are you here? Are you here to be a savior? Because after a while that doesn't hold up. So you got to really figure out why are you doing this and what do you expect from this? And are you going to take care of yourself while you're trying to take care of everybody else?
Yeah. Also in that why are you here space, we often think about, I'm going to go, I want to give advice to people. I want to give advice. And it's really the opposite of that. I don't think I give advice. One, my license will be on the line if you did whatever I tell you to do, right? But I think other thing is that advice is based on your projected experience. I'm not trying to make new Kevins. I want to make new yous. And so I think I love that, why are you here? Because at the end of the day, it's not because I want to give advice. I want to help people. I'm a wounded healer, right? And so I can only help as far as I've been healed, essentially.
And then as an intern, as an LPCA, just because you're in that beginning process, do not settle for anything less than 50K. Do not.
Okay.
Just because you're fresh in the field,
Right.
that do not allow for them to abuse your abilities and your gifts.
Right.
Because a lot of facilities, a lot of places will do that. They'll try to throw 30 at you and say this is doable, and then they'll be like, well, here's all the hours. You'll be able to get all the hours so that you can get fully licensed. But then when you get back home, you ain't really got much to be able to.
You can't even eat.
You can't even eat. Exactly. Can't even eat. And you just gotta remember, you got a master's degree. You are that person. You put in that work, and your value should also be compensated fairly.
That's big.
Talking numbers, I love it.
Right. Yeah.
That's beautiful, because how many people come in and be like, I'll take whatever because that person says that I need to do that. So that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
I got another question for you. I know you mentioned about the aspect in regards to providing advice, but it seems like to me you would need to be well more of a listener than an advocate for giving, hey, you should do this, turn left here. Have you ever experienced that? Someone's coming to you what should I do? So I'm messed up right here. What should I do?
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
Well, I would take that question that they're asking me and use that as a question. That is the question. Yeah, what should you do? And I think but I understand why they may not be able to have the answer. And so we really work through we really work to build their own decision-making model. That's a lovely question. I wonder what sort of making you stuck from not being able to achieve it, or I wonder how you're looking at it. What are some of your options? I have an idea. If you were me, but what do you think about it? and give them a little bit more empowerment to make their own decision about it. I think I would give maybe some suggestions if I would invite them to hear a consideration, if you will. But again, I'm not really going to take their question and sort of say, yeah, okay, I see you, break up, stay together, get married. But I wonder how you feel about that. That's a very steep road that you're up against, or we're chasing many rabbits. Where do you want to focus today? And so I try to find the hope in their question to give them the empowerment that they need.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we get that a lot. We get people come in. Well, I don't want to say we get that a lot, but we get people come in that just sits there and they're like, "Well, you're supposed to help me," and I'm like, "No, that's not how this works.
Right.
Like we have to, get to some things that you want to get to. Right. So if I got that question, like, what would you do? Like, you don't really want to know what I would do because what I would do may not fit what you were going to do. Right. So I can give you what I would do and it can backfire. Yeah. But that goes back to me motivating you to do something, and it goes back to what Kevin was saying. I'm telling you what I would do, so do what I would do, so you need to be me. Mm-hmm. And that's not what that person is here for. Yeah. So we have to turn that around. And I'm pretty sure we all do it beautifully, so they don't even catch it, but we have to like reframe that question back to them, right. And like, well, what do you want to do in this case? Right.
Yeah, I'm hearing some nervousness in what you really want to do. Mm-hmm. I wonder how it feels to really break through some of that. Mm-hmm. So you have to reframe your empowerment that you absolutely need. Sorry, go ahead.
Because the question ends up being the fruit of what's already at the root. And so like if you're already just like plucking the fruit for them and just feeding it to them, like you're not really getting to the bottom line of the issue. And so it's just also like, why does it feel safer to put the responsibility on me as opposed to sit with that question for yourself, and then allow for them to sit in that uncomfortability? And I am not budging. Yeah. I am not going to throw in any words to save them and let them just sit with that. Because there's always, when you tear a muscle, there's building that starts to happen at that.
Yeah. That silence is beautiful. Right. It's beautiful.
That man said tearing the muscle, all right? He works out for real. You hear this, man? Which leads us to our next segment. We want to thank you so much for our guests talking about our questionnaire. We're going to enter into our this or that, our rapid fire hot segment question, where we will ask inquiries, either choosing this or that and giving your justification why. Gentlemen, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go. Let's go. Okay, starting off, we got this for Kevin and Kenneth. When it comes to therapy sessions, do you prefer structured sessions or flexible, open-ended discussions?
I love flexible, open-ended discussions. I do practice CBT. It's a little bit more structured, if you will. That's cognitive behavioral therapy. But I love to sort of like invite them to sort of like help me lead the conversation. I can come with my agenda and my perspective and things that I want to work on today. But what do you need for today? How can we really work? This is your 15 minutes. You're the expert. What's coming up for you today? So I love the flexible, open-ended questions. That brings out, I kind of bring in a little bit more narrative, because really this is your story. Where can we go today with whatever you need?
Got it.
I like flexible as well, because generally when a client will come in, there's always that one thing that they don't want to talk about, and then as soon as what's that phenomenon called when the hand hits the door? I can't think of
the
it.
The
right
doorknob.
Now. Yes.
Yeah.
But literally, basically it's like as soon as it's like that 5-minute mark, then they'll drop everything,
so
all
breakthrough,
the heavy stuff. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and so when it's a little bit more flexible, it gives a little bit more room to be able to dive into the deeper stuff, as opposed to me, again, like trying to tell them what to do, and then to what Kevin was saying is taking away that empowerment for them.
Heath, for your therapy sessions, would you prefer a more traditional approach, or more modern, innovative techniques?
More innovative techniques, because I think therapy in itself like almost has I don't want to say a bad rap, but I think it has to be adjusted to the person. So if I'm just saying this is what we're going to do, then they're just waiting for that advice. Right. There's no empowerment in that. Right. So I like the innovative techniques and the eclectic thing. Like I don't just stick with CBT or this and that. We can flow through them all, as long as the needs are being met.
Yeah, got it. Okay, let's see. Next one, we got Kevin and Heath. When working with clients, do you prefer humor that helps lighten the mood, or do you prefer a more serious tone?
I'm humor all the way. And well, I'm mindful of the humor, because we might be in crisis. Let's buckle down and get the business. At that, huh? everything's not funny, but
Right,
I think
right.
I think I do allow humor because one, it allows my personality to enter into the room, so they can see that I'm humor and I'm real, I'm a human because I identify as human, and that kind of takes the weight off of them is when the pressure of being like so formal and like just so buttoned up and like stuffy. This room is to just sort of like let you be you and kind of be informal and just chill. Let's work together.
I agree. The humor is definitely beneficial, and I think with most of my clients, once I tell them that we'll be laughing about stuff, their shoulders relax and they're like, okay, so I don't have to be uptight. Right. And again, use my word that's not actually a word. I don't want it to be clinicky. I want it to be very high stakes but low, low feeling of it. If that makes sense.
Organic.
Yeah.
Right. That's right. Kenneth, in your opinion, are you more focused on individual therapy or incorporating family and community support with treatment?
That's tough. That's really tough. Because there's benefits to both, depending upon the scenario. But I prefer individual because I believe that it takes one to heal. And so when you start to work with that one individual, then that becomes infectious and like, oh, you're going to therapy? Maybe I can go to therapy too. And then 2 turns into 4 and 4 turns into 8. And so that's why I like to do individual therapy.
It's beautiful.
Got it. Okay, next one. We got Kevin and Heath. In your experience, do you find clients that benefit more from concrete goals or like exploring deeper underlying issues?
More deep underlying issues. I like those aha moments. I like the fact that I'm letting them know that they're not bad for having these emotions or whatever. So I definitely would prefer that. I forgot what the options were, but the one that's
Let me go back.
Yeah. That's more deeper.
Underlying
yeah,
issues.
because I like the deeper because I also, when I got my bachelor, I got my minor in philosophy. So I do throw in some, philosophy in it, a lot of logic and stuff like that. And that seems to click with a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm game with the deep underlying issues. I mean, let's get to some of the core. Although it may sort of come from like this sort of the treatment goals, right? So that may be sort of worked on some of these more heavier, deeper topics. So I like the underlying issues more.
I think, can I say something? I think sometimes a person will come in with something, and that's not really the issue.
Yeah, it's something.
So you have to go, in my experience, you have to go into that deeper thing because, again, you have a person that doesn't know how to communicate, and they feel like, well, I've been communicating, but it's not effective. It's not vulnerable. So they're being in relationships, and their partner don't even really know them. I had a couple that had 30 years together, and they did not really know each other. They didn't really know that until COVID happened because they never had to be with each other. Yeah. When COVID happened, it was like, I don't like you. Right. Like, you a weird dude. Like, and I didn't know that you did this. Because how much time do we really spend with our spouse? Like, really? And then when COVID happened, now you're on top of each other. So we have to have these deeper, conversations to get to the root of some of these things.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to aim this towards Kevin, but I'm going to leave it open-ended. Traditional techniques or furry friend, a.k.a. emotional support animals?
Well, I'm first of all, I have a dog, so I wouldn't underestimate the power of dogs. Shout out to Divine K9. That's where my dog serves as a therapy dog, and there's so much healing in sort of redirecting some of the abnormality that's happening with individuals. With the pressure is taken off of them because the dog is sort of in the room and present. So I love inviting dogs. I mean, shout out to equine therapy. Horses sort of like kind of help you navigate how you are and how anxious you are in your own body. So I will go with the emotional support animals sometimes.
All right, so next one. I got this for Kenneth. So when it comes to destigmatizing mental health, do you think public education campaigns are more effective or personal testimonies and lived experiences?
I would say personal testimonies and lived experiences because the campaigns are so broad and are kind of, they just don't hit at the heart at the same. They seem detached. That's the word I'm looking for. They seem detached, but when it's personal, and when someone's able to sit across from someone else and say, hey, I went to therapy, it was terrifying, didn't want to do it, and also on the other side of it, I found healing. As a result, my family was able to find healing, and then it's like, oh, okay, if this feels a little bit more real, as opposed to like this big ad where they try to make it multicultural, but they sometimes always just seem to miss that one race, and then it's just like,
Which race?
Right. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me, bro. And moving on to our next question.
But I will say how much. How much more powerful is testimony, right? How many more of us went to therapy when Michelle Obama said, I had low-grade depression?
Right.
We all signed up the next week because we were like, oh, she had it. Oh, my gosh. She normalized that it was okay to not be okay in the highest house in the nation.
Yeah.
Heath, in your opinion, is it better to focus on prevention and early intervention in mental health, or providing support, the treatments to those who are already struggling?
Well, I don't deal with children, so I'm mostly dealing with people that are already in it, and hopefully it'll trickle down and affect their children. So for me, it's the latter.
Got it. All right, man, that was an awesome this or that segment.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, man, let's go ahead and do the final question of the night. I know we talked about this off air, right? Now, you got a chance to sit down with us, chop it up with us, have good convo, good vibes, all of that. Now, with that said, though, who do y'all think would be a good guest for the podcast? But before you answer, it has to be somebody in your phone, in your contacts, and be like, hey, I chopped it up with the 2-hour lunch break. I had an amazing time. Y'all should pull up. Who would that person or people be?
Shout out to my guy, Fabian Hall, actually. He is the executive director for the D. Wood Foundation, where we do suicide prevention awareness and peer support. I'm actually the chief project officer for them, and we do a lot of good work in the community. So I'm pretty proud of the work that he's doing. He started the organization mainly because his mom died by suicide, and so he wanted to leave a legacy through her. So shout out to his mom, and so I would definitely say Fabian Hall for sure.
I am blanking on my friend's last name because it's hyphenated, and
Okay.
she won't kill me. But her first name is Brittany, and
Okay.
she's also a black therapist, but she specializes in addiction, specifically drugs and alcohol. And so I just think that to hear this perspective from a black woman's perspective, as well as addiction, because addiction also runs rampant in the black community, and so to be able to hear her POV would be very, very powerful.
For me, it would be Monica Hammond, and she's a colleague of mine, and her specialty is Superwoman syndrome, and she helps black women deal with, operating in corporate and also at home, how you need to take care of yourself, and everything doesn't have to be on you. Right. You can say no, and with that, you have to allow yourself to say no. You have to take that, So she would be a great guest.
And I would say Fabian Wood. It's the T that got me to get black on the.
Fabian Hall. Yeah. Fabian Wood.
She got you feeling nice.
Slide that T.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Throw a little bit of Apple Crown in there while you at it.
Since we doing therapy.
Right.
Oh, man.
Give everybody your social media handle so they know where to find you.
Yeah, I am Kevin Overton.
At Kenneth B. Dobbins.
H. Muhammad LPC.
Got it. I was gonna say, man, well, that wraps up this edition of the 2-Hour Lunch Break podcast, man. Once again, shout out to the guys for taking the time out of their busy schedules to pull up on us.
Appreciate you.
Shout out to our production behind the boards. You can't see them, but you can find them at Cafe Yodo. Shout out to our home studio, Dawa Studios, East Austin, Texas. Episodes of the 2-Hour Lunch Break can be found on all streaming platforms. You can find us on Instagram at 2HLBpod and on X at the 2-Hour Lunch. Thank you for tuning in. We out. Hey.
Appreciate you.
And it's coming home to Texas. It's coming home all the way to Austin, Texas, baby.